I was lifted when Governor Mike Easley stood up for the law and the moral right to learn, like many of you. I was thrilled by the Christmas spirit in Dr. Martin Lancaster's defense of the moral and legal right of undocumented immigrants to a higher education in the community college system that he leads. Dr. Lancaster, who is retiring from leading our community college, stood tall. And we ought to think about what his arguments were. He said that since 1958, when the first industrial education center was established, community colleges have had an open door policy. This meant that from day one, anyone without regard to educational background or attainment, race or ethnicity, social or economic standard should be admitted to benefit from our programs. He then went on to lay out some other things that we ought to continue to reiterate. Number one, the vast majority of students who might pursue an educational opportunity at the community college came to this country as children, and they had no choice in the matter. They were brought here by their parents. Now, how can these children now be considered as lawbreakers? Number two, he said each of these students had an opportunity to receive a free public education, in many cases from kindergarten through the 12th grade, and some of them have even graduated as valedictorian or honor graduates. Therefore, the perverse thing about the position many would have us take is that parents can strap a 1-year-old child on their backs and cross the Rio Grande, and 6 months later have a second child, and the two children will be treated differently just because of a decision of the parents. Third, to attend a community college as an undocumented immigrant, these students will have to pay $7,465 a year as a full-time curriculum student, which is $2,090 more than the legislature gives the community college to educate a full-time student. Therefore, there is no state subsidy for these students, and people need to stop suggesting that them going to the community college is actually costing the state. Number four, in every area of American history, the latest wave of immigrants, whether it's the Irish, the Czechs, the Poles, the Germans, and yes, even those who were brought here involuntarily, the African Americans, have faced the same opposition that our Hispanic and Latino brothers and sisters face now when they arrived on this shore. We are a nation of immigrants, and if one reviews the names of those who have called the system office, the community college systems office, in opposition to the door policy, President Lancaster said that if you look at those names and trace the history, you will have to conclude that 50 or 100 years ago, these were their grandparents and their great-grandparents faced the same opposition that Hispanics face now. In other words, they come from immigrants too. Number five, unless the federal government fulfills its obligation to address the whole immigration issue, it is highly unlikely that these students will ever return to their countries of origin, either voluntarily or involuntarily. Therefore, they will remain in North Carolina or some other state and be a significant part of the workforce in the future. To say that undocumented workers can't work in North Carolina ignores the fact that thousands of them are already working today in almost every field we can imagine. Then Lancaster said this, number six. He said many European countries are now experiencing more significant violent, destructive, and terrorist activity by immigrants than we are experiencing in this country. For years, these countries have denied immigrants basic rights and services, creating a permanent, disenfranchised, and angry underclass. By refusing to educate and make productive members of our society the children of undocumented workers, North Carolina and the United States face some of the same things we see happening in other countries. And so I express my deep gratitude to Dr. Lancaster. His arguments parallel the national NAACP policies, and I wanted to say that today so that people understand that they will not separate us along the lines of black and brown. Our policies at the national NAACP, which are the policies of the state NAACP, which are the policies of the local NAACP, says quality public education for African Americans and Latino students is persistently threatened as a direct result of inequitable school funding. Generally, wealthy school districts have higher per pupil expenditures than high poverty districts. The NAACP is committed to working with local education agencies to reduce resource disparities by 50% and to guarantee that African American and Latino students have an opportunity to a constitutional fair education.